I'm back with another YouTube tutorial. I ain't gonna keep you. We're gonna jump straight into it. Let's get it. First things first, we'll bring the athletes in and we're gonna remove the backgrounds with the remove background tool. Terry's photo didn't come out so good, so I'm just gonna use the paintbrush to paint away with the AI mist. I'll fine tune the others and then I'm gonna put them into this kind of hierarchy, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of space right here for the info. And yes, I put Saquon above Jalen because Saquon's been balling this year. Next, I'll start to bring the images in the camera raw filter. So that's filter, camera raw filter. There I'm going to do a bunch of small edits, but the main thing to remember here is to decrease the highlights and the whites, and you're going to increase the clarity and the texture. Then we're going to do this for all images. Now I'll bring in the background I'll regret later in this video, and I'm going to scale it up to fit the canvas. Then from there, I'm going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. That'll push the main subjects forward like I've talked about in past videos. After that, let's add a solid color, and we're going to make this kind of a maroonish type color. Then we're going to use the blending modes to scroll through and see the different effects that we like. Overlay's looking good, but let's lower that to about 72 opacity. Here's where I started to realize that I'm going to change the background eventually, but what I always teach is the principles are the principles when it comes to designing. Watch how seamless the background will be added into the video later because the design structure is already laid out. While I was talking, you may have noticed I did the same exact process for the eagle side. So I made a solid color, I found a green I liked, and then I found a blending mode for it. I chose exclusion. This time I added a second solid color by hitting Command J on the keyboard, and then I gave the green side a little bit more color. I landed on the vivid light blend mode, and I left that at 73% opacity. Now let's add a gradient, and we're going to make that radial. Then we're going to leave this right here in the middle at 100% opacity, and we'll make it this kind of orange type color. Then let's duplicate it twice by hitting Command J. I'm going to leave that second solid color alone, and we're going to focus on the third one. I need to flatten it so that I can use it freely. So I'm going to hit Command G, then I'm going to hit Command E on the keyboard, and then that's going to flatten it. Now you have a free moving gradient that I'll move right behind Jaden Daniels, and that'll be left that lighter color. Next, duplicate that layer, and then I'm going to change that color to a better suited color for the Eagles. I'm going to move that element right behind Saquon. It's time to add another gradient fill, and we're going to leave this one as linear, and we're going to make the color black. Then we're going to leave that at 100% opacity. Next, we'll make another gradient fill, and this one we're going to make red, but this is going to be radial, and we're going to leave it above the black gradient at like 28%. It seems subtle, but it'll add a nice little light leak at the end, and compositions that focus on the small details are the ones that are much better in my opinion. Now add the second to last gradient. That's going to be all black, and we're going to leave it just like that. What I did here was add gradients behind the athletes to give distance from the background, and then gradient in front of the athletes to add distance from them in the logos that are going to be added. Great compositions always have great layering. Next, we're going to add a drop shadow and a gradient overlay to Jalen Hurts. The purpose of the gradient overlay is to add a specific light direction. Let's do this for the rest of them and see how it looks. This is where I finally got annoyed with the background, so I went and found this one. This is already a pretty good image, so all I had to do was add it in and add a little Gaussian blur. This background low-key saved the whole design. I'm going to speed ramp here because I just added a few lights using the soft brush to give it a better effect. From here, it's time to add lighting by selecting Jalen Hurts' mask, and we're going to do that by clicking here while holding down Command. After that, let's create a new layer. Now we can find a color that we like, and then we're going to just paint it inside the mask. So a tip here is to use a mix of the large and small soft brushes. The small brushes are good for that close-up detail where you want the light streaks and you want a little more boldness, and you're going to move further back and scale up on the brush when you want to just add some light that's going to cascade over the subject. Then you can group that as your glow effect, and you can change the blending mode and opacity to your liking. Last piece of the puzzle is to add a layer behind the athlete, and you're just going to do a one-click soft brush, and that's going to be the light source behind them for a semi-glow effect. Too much glow makes it look fake, so I decided to leave it just like this. Now let's do the same for the rest of them, and it'll leave you with something like this. I promise this is the last batch of gradients. So the first one is going to be an orange one. It's going to be radial, and it's going to be right below the black one at the top. And if I didn't mention this before, when you add the gradients in, make sure you kind of brush away from where the faces are, because you don't want too much atmosphere there, aka effects, because that can make them kind of be muted out a little bit. Then we're going to add another orange one. Make sure that's radial, and that'll be right there in this info section. And finally, we add the last one in between the athletes. Now I can bring in the info, make it look official, and then it's time for the fun part. So we'll duplicate and flatten the image. Then you're going to choose what camera raw filters or set of filters that you want to use to make it look complete. You already know that I'm going to use my camera raw filters volume pack 1. I told y'all this works for everything. It's down in the description if you want to download it. And I'm going to add multiple camera raw filters on top of each other. So that's the key I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but it works. And when it's finally all said and done, I landed on this, a bold NFL-like sports graphic, ready for promo.